Welcome to Juan's World 2.0, and haven't seen you for a while, or you haven't seen me, I guess, for a while, because I've been busy with my writing. But I'm taking a little bit of a break just today. I'm nearly finished with a manuscript that I've been working on for nearly 2 years, off and on. I've had other things that I've had to deal with, like proofing and copy editing and so forth, of other things that are in the works. But for now, I'm taking a little break. I think it's about 8 o'clock in the morning, and I've been writing since midnight, and got to a stopping point and thought, okay, well, before I start cooking, I'll have a little chat, because something happened yesterday that saddened me. I was looking up the contact information for an old friend of mine. We'd been at Oxford together. He was a new Morris dancer when I was squire of the Oxford University Morris team. He played a great fiddle. He was a wonderful fiddle player, and the fiddle he played, he'd made himself. It was quite extraordinary. It was very sweet sounding fiddle, and he'd made it himself. And he had a great sense of humor, and he was just sort of like a bit of a dilettante, if you like. He was at Oxford for a couple of years, just because he sort of felt like it. I don't even quite remember what he was studying. He had been a mathematics undergraduate somewhere, I don't remember. It could have been Princeton, don't remember. But he was there just kind of, because he felt like hanging out. He took the boat that the Rhodes Scholars take each year to go from wherever, New York, I guess, to Southampton or London. I don't remember, but anyway, they all go together from the United States to Oxford, and he wanted to be on that boat with them. And he met another guy who actually I became good friends with as well. And for 2 years at Oxford, we kind of palled around a fair amount, and then I kept in touch with him. He went back to the United States. He did a PhD in mathematics at Princeton, and apparently did something extraordinary. I don't know what it was, but got him a job at Brown University, and then eventually he ended up as head of mathematics at Harvard, and finally as dean of Harvard College. So he did very well for himself, and I kept in touch with him off and on. In the 80s, I'm thinking, not much beyond that. I did keep track of him a little bit, but I didn't get in touch with him very much. I did stay with him once. I think it was around 1982, when I was groomsman at a wedding of a colleague of mine in Providence, and this other friend of mine was living there at the time, so I stayed with him, with my wife and with his wife, and so that was all very good. And then we sort of lost touch. And I thought, okay, well, I'll just find out, because I knew he retired from Harvard. I knew that he ended up in California and had some kind of visiting appointment or something like that, I don't know. But I thought, well, let me just see. He was about my age. And so I looked him up. He had a Wikipedia page, because he'd done some quite extraordinary things. He'd got a MacArthur award, what they call the Genius Award, and so it was in Wikipedia. So I looked him up, and the first thing I saw was that the information about him was in the past tense. He died, and I was just horrified. He died at the end of last year, December 2025, of cancer, a cancer that apparently he had been sort of, nursing. I don't know quite what the right word is, but he'd had the cancer for a very long time. He'd had it since he was a child, and he'd had therapies and operations and things, and it had gone into remission or whatever, and but finally came back and killed him. And I was just gobsmacked, that this guy that I had, known all these years, but I hadn't kept in touch with, and was gone. And so the first lesson in there, which has nothing to do with what I'm going to talk about, is that we should be in better touch with people. Trouble is, you see, I live in Cambodia, and people who live in the United States are kind of hard to get hold of. They're hard to get hold of for a couple of reasons. One of them is just because they're a long way away, and because if I want to call somebody, for example, they're 12 hours behind me. So my son lives in New York, and if I want to call him, it has to be in the middle of the night, which is okay because I'm usually up in the middle of the night, but it's still a nuisance. So that's my my little aphorism for the day: be in touch with the people you care about. Well, the thing that really impressed me about him on the occasion when I stayed with him in Providence when I was going to the wedding was that by that time it was pretty obvious that he was a smart guy. Some people would call him a genius. And my topic here is, what is a genius? So we were talking, and there were a couple of things that were really just amazing about his life. And the first one that stuck with me was that I stayed with him for about 3 or 4 days. And it was in the middle of the summer, so he wasn't teaching. So he was available to just kind of hang out and do stuff. But he said, every day for an hour, I'm just going to go to my study and, shut the door, and I don't want to be disturbed. And, so I don't know what time it was, but I saw something like 10 o'clock, 10 to 11. I just don't want to be disturbed. Because for that 1 hour every day, he worked on whatever it is he was researching at the time. And it was only an hour. I mean, there's 24 hours in a day, 23 of them he's just kind of putzing around. But 1 hour every single day, 7 days a week, he's devoting all of his energy to his research. And that's really inspiring. I mean, I spend a lot more time than that every day. And I'm, living alone, so I don't get disturbed. Nobody ever calls me or whatever. And, but I'm impressed by the fact that he's doing groundbreaking research in mathematics for 1 hour a day. And this is the other point, and the point I really want to make. So I said to him at one point, "Gosh, you're really a smart guy." And he said, "Yeah, but there are people that are a lot smarter than me." And I was just gobsmacked by that too. That even though, he's won, big prizes, and he's, head of a department at an Ivy League school and all of that, he's still very humble. He's just saying, yeah, well, other people are smarter than me. And that to me is kind of like almost the hallmark of a genius. Like a person who goes around, and I won't mention any names, but there are some politicians in the United States right now who are calling themselves geniuses and what have you. Like, anyone who calls himself a genius is not one. Like, people who are smart are also humble. They know their limits. They know what they can do and what they can't do. And bringing it back to myself, like, I know I'm smart, but I spent a lot of time in high school and in university doing very poorly. And the reason I did very poorly was because I had no motivation. My high school in Australia, where I went for 3 years before my family moved to England, I was sort of middle of the pack at the best. My work in certain subjects was just awful. Some were pretty good. I was always good in the sciences. Mathematics, yeah, was sort of okay. Latin, terrible. Geography, bordering on terrible, and so forth. Then I went to a school in England, in South Buckinghamshire, and I also did poorly. I mean, I did all right in some subjects, again, you know, like chemistry and physics, I did all right. Latin, I did better than I did in Australia because they didn't start Latin until the second year in England, and I was in the third year when I went to this school. So I was picking up on work that I had already done. I was in the third year in Australia, so I had done almost 3 years worth of work, whereas the students at my grammar school in England had only done 1 year. So I did a little better. Not a whole lot better, but a little bit better. And then I moved to another school. And again, sort of middle of the pack, you know, not really doing very well. But I was in with a group of students, mostly boys. I mean, there were some girls who were pretty sort of like up to par, but most of the you know, top students, the ones that you had to kind of compete with for top of the hill, were boys. And they were really smart. I mean, they were just super smart. And I got competitive. You know, I thought, okay, well, let me see what I can do. You know, and so I kind of put a move on. And it turns out that I ended up going all the way to the sixth form with those same students. And 7 of us, out of a total of, I think there were about 25 boys in the upper sixth, 7 of us went to Oxford or Cambridge. We had to take special exams ahead of time. You know, before we took our regular state exams, we had to take entrance exams, and we had to go up and do interviews and so forth. And 7 of us got places, some very good scholarships, and you know, good, you know, like powerful stuff. I didn't get any of that, but I did get a place at Oxford, and it was because of motivation. And it leads me to think about what is sometimes called merit or a meritocracy. And it's something I very much believe in. And that is that merit consists of 2 things. Like, your rank in terms of your merit has to do with your ability, number 1, and number 2, your effort. You know, so some people can be very smart and put no effort into things, and so they have very low merit. Whereas other people can have very limited ability, but put in a lot of motivation, and they have very high merit. And of course, the great combination is to have high ability and high motivation or high effort. So, you know, when I think about myself, when I think about the work that I'm doing, like right now, you know, like my ability hasn't changed at all since I was, you know, like 9 or 10 years old. But my effort has changed enormously over the years. And right now, my effort is probably towards its peak. I get up sometime around midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning, and I start writing, and I work on my writing until the sun comes up, usually about 6 o'clock. Then I piddle around, looking at movies or something like that for a little while. And then for the rest of the day, I go off and on, you know, a little bit of writing, a little bit of researching, reading, what have you, a little bit of cooking, once in a while making a video, but all the time I'm thinking about my writing and putting my effort towards that goal. And so I started publishing books in the 1980s, but then by 1999, when I produced my 8th book, I think it was, I stopped publishing, not because I wanted to stop publishing, but because publishers had changed their rules about what they wanted to publish. And I had other things to do. I had a son that I was raising. I was head of my department, commuting 4 hours a day when I was teaching. Had no money, so I had 3 jobs. I was also a volunteer firefighter, an EMT. I was a pastor of a church. You know, like everything got in the way. And then, you know, eventually I quit my job and started wandering around the world. Ended up in Cambodia, where I am now. And COVID hit. And I couldn't do anything. You know, I couldn't even leave my apartment. I could leave the apartment to go downstairs to the parking area, but the parking area had a gate which was locked. I couldn't get out. Once in a while, I could get the guard to unlock the gate so I could go to a corner store that was a couple of steps away from my apartment building, and like buy a Coca-Cola or a pack of cigarettes. I smoked it at that time. But that was it. So like 20 minutes I was out of my apartment complex, and 23 hours and 40 minutes I was in my apartment. So I just started sending off emails to publishers saying, I've got some books that I've been writing, because I'd kept writing all the time, but I hadn't flogged any of them to publishers. I just stuck them on my hard drives. And at the time, I think, so we're talking about 2020, I guess, I had 8 books completed on my hard drive. And I just started sending off proposals, like I've got this book on such and so, Genesis, you're interested? And eventually I got some people to take a bite. And now I'm sort of drowning in offers because a couple of very high-profile publishers published a couple of books of mine. And once that happens, then others take notice. And so now, if I propose something, it doesn't take too long. It still takes a while, but it doesn't take forever to get somebody to accept what you have on offer. So right now I've got 2 books that are in production. They're just being proofed and edited and whatnot. And I've got one that I'm almost finished. I'm on the last chapter, and the chapter is, summing up. Like, okay, I've told you all these things about the subject matter. Now here's my conclusions, and I'm stopped producing a video because my conclusions are still a little bit too vague. I need to kind of amp up a little bit. But it just tells me that the key to success isn't so much ability. Ability matters. Like there are some people who are very good at playing an instrument. But the reason that they're very good is not because they have some kind of genetic ability to play the piano or the violin or whatever. It's because they do a lot of work. When you want to be, like a concert musician, you've got to practice every day for hours and hours and hours. So when I hear people say, oh, such and so has a lot of talent, I just say, come on. Yeah, sure, they have ability and they have interest, but what makes their ability useful and exciting is the effort they put into it. And that's how I feel about my writing now, is that it pleases me, it amuses me. I enjoy it because I put effort into it. So when we come back to that question, what is a genius, then I return to my concept of merit. That a person who is a genius, like my friend who died, is that they have a certain ability, and they put a lot of effort into it. And the product is a genius. But the additional part is they don't brag about it, they just go about their business. So that's my story for today. I'm going to put this up on YouTube and then go back to my writing, and hope you have a wonderful day and a wonderful week. Take care.